Welcome to part 5 of the video series about what must be in the ideal The Elder Scrolls 6. Let's not waste any time. Number 18 on my list. Food in the game. I should have added this one on the list earlier because we're doing this little iceberg thing. But it just came to my mind how useless food is in Skyrim. I literally never cared to eat food or cook food in Skyrim, and I bet you too. Why? Because it's useless. Of course, unless you want to eat 50 cheese wheels at once. But at the end of the day, potions are way more efficient and much lighter. So we need to make food much more efficient. Something like in Final Fantasy 15. First, the effects from the food must be unique, so the potions won't be a better version of food. At the same time, it has to be well balanced, so it won't bring disbalance into the game. The game must be playable without any food buffs. It must be a choice, a bonus, not a necessity. Number 19. The return of hand-to-hand combat style. After playing Baldur's Gate 3, I really came to like Monk class. The sheer feeling of playing as a monk, that you don't need any weapons. The feeling of having no armor and no weapons on you and still being deadly. In Skyrim, you could fight with bare hands, but it was absolutely ineffective. The damage was miserable. You technically can play Skyrim fists only, but nobody does, because again, it is ineffective. So in Test 6 we need to change that. Though, test games are trying to be grounded and realistic to the rules of the universe. So A, it is unlikely that Bethesda will make equal amount of damage for fists and swords. So there must be some special gauntlets or something. And B, since it's unrealistic that hand-to-hand will have the same amount of damage as actual weapons, we need to make it effective in some other way. For example, different effects for different attacks. For example, some obvious examples: disarming attacks, knocking down attacks, paralyzing attacks. In Test for Oblivion, hand-to-hand was an ordinary skill, as for example, blade skill, which means that it had the same perks as any other skills, such as disarm, knock down and paralyze. In Test 6 we need to have it too. But since hand-to-hand probably won't get the same amount of damage as weapons do, the chance these attacks will succeed will have to be really high. In Test for Oblivion it was 5% chance. In Test 6 it must be like 40%. And we need push attack to knock people off a cliff. Number 20. What about bows? In previous video we were talking about thrown weapons. Now let's talk about bows. Everything is fine with them, but I propose to add limb damage to bows in Test 6. That is, if you shoot the enemy in the leg, he will walk slower. If in the hand, one has a weaker attack, the headshot will do a double amount of damage. And of course, no slow time ability. This ability literally eliminates the player's skills to aim at the body limbs, or the enemy as a whole. The number of hits on the enemy should depend only on the player's skill to shoot accurately. Now, before we move on, if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. There are currently 3 more videos like this on the channel, or you can check out my video analysis on the Rockstar formula, how Rockstar creates their games. Thank you, let's move on. Number 21 will be a short one. Adding Rebound. A simple mechanic but absolutely crucial tool for any modern melee combat system. It's like walking. The ability to evade damage or an encirclement by a group of enemies is a necessity. It's a must mechanic. Skyrim combat was pretty much just an exchange of damage dealing. A dull system. It's time to move on. The best melee combat systems in the industry utilize Rebound, or some other form of dodging mechanics. Sekiro, Lies of P, The Witcher 3, and many more. All these games benefit from having Rebound or some other sort of dodging mechanics. It is time for test games to have it too. Number 22 will be again simple: the returning of spears to the game. They were present in Test 3 Morrowind, and the question why we need them is simple: to add variety. For example, for combos with two types of weapons. For example, a spear in your left hand for medium range, and a sword in your right hand for short range. I think it is obvious. The ability to deal damage at both medium range and short range cannot be overestimated. Now imagine that this spear could be thrown, causing a huge damage. Compared to a bow, spears would inflict more damage, but they're heavy and you won't be able to carry a lot of them around. Now imagine the situation. In your left hand you have a spear, in your right a sword. You enter a cave and a bandit is running at you. You stab him with a spear at medium range. Then you notice his friend who is also running at you. You switch the spear to throw mode, throw it at the second dude, kill him and take out your second weapon for your left hand, for example an axe. And now you are fighting one-on-one with two weapons in your hands. I think it's not bad. And of course, a shield and a spear combo is iconic. In short, we definitely need spears in Test 6. Now, before we move on, we need to clarify some things about adding different mechanics, such as throwing knives that we discussed in the previous video, food effects, hand-to-hand combat style, spears, etc. The whole point is to give the player the variety and freedom to choose. The game must be balanced in the way, so these mechanics would be optional. If the player doesn't want to do something, the game must be playable without it. Like for example, picking locks is one of the core mechanics. It is a must mechanic. Things that I mentioned earlier must be optional. A good example are Souls games, like Dark Souls 3. Each weapon has its own moveset, so the attack that the player makes depends on the weapon. You can stick to the traditional weapon, or you can play with a whip in Dark Souls 3. But the fact that there is a whip in the game doesn't mean that the player must use it. The majority of the gamers didn't use it, and it's okay, it's the player's decision what to use. The developer's job is to provide options and make mechanics that are not useless. So the option exists not just for show, but as a valid way to play the game. After all, test games are all about variety and the freedom to play the game as you wish. So we've talked about the combat system. Let's move on to magic again. And here we will talk more specifically and go through all the schools of magic in order. There are 5 schools of magic in Skyrim. In Oblivion, there were 6. Skyrim lost the school of mysticism somewhere. Now you probably think that I will say that we need to return something from Oblivion again. That I will say that we need to return the school of mysticism. You will be surprised, but no. And it's not that I don't want more magic. It's that the more there are schools of magic, the more schools will need to be leveled up. And in fact, the boundaries of the schools are quite blurry. For example, in Oblivion the spell Soul Trap belonged to the school of mysticism, and in Skyrim to the school of summoning. So it doesn't really matter. In Test 6, we leave 5 schools of magic. So let's talk about them. Number 23. Reworking the School of Destruction. Here we will talk about the types of the spells. So what do we have? First of all, there are very few varieties of spells in the School of Destruction magic in Skyrim. That is, we take everything that we had in Skyrim and Oblivion, all the ways to inflict damage, at a distance, by touch, indirectly, on the ground, on yourself such as cloaks, on the area such an explosion, and also at a medium distance, such a flamethrower. All this should be available in different variations, and of course, there should be the possibility of creating your own spells, as I said in the previous videos. Next, we need to bring back the type of poison damage from Oblivion. Why not? Then let's not forget to add the spells that were shouts in Skyrim. Like for example, Form of Ice. For those who does not know or forgot, in Skyrim there was a shout that froze the enemies, something like paralysis, and at the same time the enemy received a minor damage. It helped if you were surrounded by many enemies at once. It temporarily took them out of the battle. However, unlike paralysis, if you strike an enemy that froze, he will get out of freeze. A fairly balanced spell. Let's not forget about this shout that caused a storm on a large area and struck all living things with lightning. Of course, it would be a high level spell. And of course, why not introduce the wind magic that all players came to love, in the form of the famous Fusroda shout. This spell blows opponents away, knocking them down. Players especially like to throw enemies into the abyss with this spell, which instantly led to their death. In short, we need all good things that we have now and more. Now, that's it for today. What do you want to see in Test 6? Write a comment, let me know. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss the next videos. Now, eat your vegetables and don't be naughty. See you later.